Morning, everybody.
Good
Hi, Mark.
morning.
How's everyone doing?
Great.
Doing
Good.
well.
Glad to
Good.
see you.
Glad to be seen. Great to see all of you too. Give me a minute. I'm just kind of getting settled.
Yeah.
Life is a little hectic these days.
Understood.
So for
See,
everyone, we're going to go ahead and start with introductions, saving the assembly member for last. That way he knows who's in the room. And then we'll just dive into conversation. Mark, give me the thumbs up when you're ready to go.
let's boogie.
All right. But first, before we
That's
get
my
started,
version of a thumbs up.
a really
Yeah.
important question, Mark. What was the baby's first costume?
You're Diana, you're coming out the gate with the hard-hitting questions.
He
Yeah.
is.
We were the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And obviously my wife was Goldilocks, and I was a bear, and Caden, our baby boy, was a bear, and then our dog was the third bear.
Oh, cool.
So
Cool.
it worked out great. We got as many pictures as we could in about the 60 seconds that the baby and the dog allowed us to have really silly costumes on them. And I'm calling it a win.
That
I'm
is a
taking back
win.
in.
All
You
right.
got
Yeah.
60 seconds. That's a win.
Yeah.
We'll just dive in with introductions. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the November, yeah, 2025 Government Affairs Committee. I am Diana Batista, chair of the committee, and in my daytime job, I am with Stanford Children's Hospital. So good to see you all. We're just gonna go like I usually do, popcorn style. So get ready, Gary,
Gary Hedden with Greentown, Los Altos, always interested in environmental issues. Good to see you, Mark.
Great to see you, Gary.
Ruth.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and good morning, Mark. It's good to see you again. I'm Ruth from Women SV. It's a nonprofit educational center that focuses on education around covert abuse and coercive control, and that's to explain the hair. Teal is the color of sexual assault awareness, and purple is the color of domestic violence awareness, which the month we just had in October. So good to be here. Thank you, everybody.
The hair looks beautiful. Good to see you, Ruth.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Good to see you.
Yes.
Well, another fellow Mark with a C, so hello. I'm on the chamber board and I work for a local family office
Good to see you, Mark. With a C.
with a C. I'll pass it to Scott.
Scott O'Brien with Cushman and Wakefield, former chamber board member, and just here to be interested in what's going on here in the community.
Awesome. Good to see you, Scott.
Good to see you. Thanks, Mark.
V.
You cut off Diana. Did you say Sally?
Well, now I will say Councilmember Sally. Yes.
I heard Lee and I didn't see a Lee. So anyway, good morning. I'm off camera this morning, not being camera ready. So, but I am here. I'm not just lurking. Good to see you, Assemblymember Berman. It's been a while. If I'm waving, you can't see that. And I'm always glad to hear what you have to say.
Great to see you, Sally.
Not
We will
see.
go to Abby next.
You know, Mark, I was such a good Girl Scout. I used to get badges, but this is the new one I'm wearing. Because yes, I'm so glad we all voted.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Abby.
You got it.
Not to
Evan.
throw the
Sorry.
bus, but I think my wife threw away my I voted sticker. And then my staff was like, "Can you get your I voted sticker to use it for a social media post?" And I said, "Yes." And then I went and looked, and it wasn't there anymore. But my wife is way better at keeping our house moderately clean while we have a newborn. So credit to her, even if we missed out on a social media post.
We'll never know now if you voted.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Good morning, everybody. Kevin Fong. I'm Assemblymember Berman's district director.
A darn good one, I will say. Nicole.
Agreed.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I work here at the chamber, and my son was Mario and Mario Kart he had a little inflatable cart for Halloween.
Oh, how old is your son?
He is 8, and I was a banana peel. He told me I was going to be a banana peel to get in his way in his Mario
Yeah.
Kart. And
Yeah.
my husband was Shy Guy, so we did a whole family thing.
I love it. I love it.
And Kim.
And Kim Mosley, President of the Los Altos Chamber of Commerce. Great to see everyone this morning. Thanks for
Good
coming.
to see you, Kim.
Thank you.
And just to let everyone know, this is being recorded, so it will be shared with folks who couldn't make it this morning. It is, of course, 9 a.m. on a work day, so some folks can't get away always. So we record for those for later. Now, without further ado, I'm going to quickly do a quick introduction for the Assembly member. I think we all know him. But Marc Berman was first elected to the California State Assembly in November 2016. He represents the 23rd Assembly District, which includes southern San Mateo County and northern Santa Clara County. Actually, it's a very beautiful district going down to the coast side. And in previous years, he's authored bills to establish first in the nation firearm violence prevention. He has an incredible record in the Assembly, and previously served on the Palo Alto City Council, where he was a leader on infrastructure improvement and financial transparency. And prior to that, he has some nonprofit experience working with the Silicon Valley Education Foundation. And in a past life, Marc was an attorney. So I can go on and on and on, but no one wants to hear me talk. We want to hear about you, Assemblymember Berman, about what you are seeing and hearing and providing an update from Sacramento, including insights on the state budget, which is going to be really interesting. Any legislation highlights from past season and maybe what to expect in 2026 if you look in your crystal ball. So without further ado, again, Assemblymember Berman.
Amazing. Thank you, Diana, for that very kind introduction. So good to see everybody, and I think mostly to see everybody again, because I see a lot of friendly faces on the Zoom. Is my connection okay? Am I free? It's good. Okay. I'm in what we call the outhouse here at our house, so I don't bother the sleeping baby, and sometimes the internet isn't that great. Well, it's great to see everybody again. Diana did a great job of kind of giving some of my bio. As she mentioned, 2/3 of my district is in Santa Clara County, 1/3 is in San Mateo County, but it's a remarkably diverse district, including some of the wealthiest communities in the state, in the world, really. And also communities where a lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are struggling to get by. A lot of people who don't work in tech, farm worker communities on the coast, even a lot of residents here on the Bayside, where the constantly increasing cost of living is making it really hard for folks to get by, whether that's the working poor or that's a lot of retirees now. Who are on fixed income and are really struggling with the fact that the cost of living here is just increasing so much year over year. And so that, whether it's tech issues or housing or farming and agriculture or environmental issues and climate change issues, practically every bill that comes across my desk in the legislature impacts some part of my district, impacts some group of constituents. And so that makes it, to be honest, really fun. I love that my district is so diverse and therefore, is impacted one way or another by so many different bills. I have lots of other colleagues. Uh-oh, I think I'm losing. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we
We're
can.
just switching. Got it. So that just makes my job a lot more enriching versus colleagues some of whom only represent rural districts, some of whom only represent 2 square miles of Los Angeles. So that's just been really I've been really fortunate to have such a cool district over the last now 9 years. And I was elected to the Assembly in 2016, the first night that Donald Trump got elected the first time. So this is sort of deja vu all over again. But it's just makes the work feel that much more important. For my first 5 years in the Assembly, I chaired the Elections Committee, and really have been a leader in the elections policy space over the last 9 years. That includes authoring, ironically, the legislation to make California a permanent universal vote by mail state, which the president was criticizing on Truth Social just yesterday. saying that everybody knows that vote by mail is rigged. And therefore, they're going to be filing lawsuits in California to challenge the results of our elections. We know that these are just lies, and frankly, damaging lies that I think really undermine voters' faith in our democracy, undermine voters' faith in our election systems, because there are a lot of people who believe what the president says. And ironically, it damages his own party because it causes a lot of Republicans not to vote by mail. And then they don't vote. And then they lose. So it's sort of this self-fulfilling prophecy. But obviously, our vote by mail system is very secure. Speaking of secure, I wrote the legislation to create the first state Office of Elections Cybersecurity in the country back in 2017, I think 2018. And that Office of Election Cybersecurity is housed under the Secretary of State's office to make sure that our 58 counties have secure election systems, that they're using best practices. Santa Clara County, 2 million people, a lot of resources, they use best practices. But a lot of counties in California are smaller. They don't have that many resources. And so it's important for the state to be a resource to them and sort of a conduit between the Department of Homeland Security and the small counties in terms of using best practices, and so that, and then another part of that office is to target misinformation and disinformation around the time, place, and manner of voting. So you can't go online and lie and say, vote on Wednesday, November 5th, for example. There's a lot of the First Amendment gives people a lot of leeway to say lots of things, but lying about the time, place, and manner of voting is a misdemeanor in California if it's done with the intent of tricking voters and disenfranchising voters. I also authored the law to make that a misdemeanor. I hope everyone here has signed up and used this past election the Where's My Ballot ballot tracking system that we have in California. That was another bill that I authored back in 2018, 2019. Full disclosure, stole it from Colorado. So I've got no pride in ownership. I think an important part of our job is to look around and see what other states are doing, and see whether or not those ideas make sense for California. That's an effort to really increase voters' faith in our democracy, right? Because they get notifications, your ballot was received, your ballot was counted, or maybe your ballot was received, but there was a problem, with the signature verification. So then we send you a text explaining to you how to fix that, so that your voice can be counted and your vote can be counted and your voice can be heard. So that's kind of ways to try to strengthen our democracy in California. So some of my elections bills, I've been fortunate. I've got a great staff, as Diana mentioned, and I've been fortunate to pass 107 bills in my first 9 years in the Assembly, out of the legislature into the governor. And out of those 107, 101 have been signed into law. So a pretty good low veto rate. Governor Newsom has only vetoed one of my bills in 7 years, which kind of surprised me. And ironically, that one bill that he vetoed, it was to create an Office of School-Based Health in California. He vetoed it, and then 2 years later, he put it in the budget because he realized he messed up, and that it was actually a good policy and an office that could work with school districts to create a lot of value. He put that in the budget during COVID. He vetoed it before COVID. So I'm going to say that I'm batting 100% with the governor. Diana mentioned the budget. The budget, the big difference, I think, between now and 9 years ago, with Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0, is that in Trump 1.0, we had massive budget surpluses. And so we had the ability to really mitigate the damages that were being done to California communities and California constituents. And that's not the case now. We're in tougher budget times. We've had budget deficits the last 2 budget cycles. The good news is that revenue projections have exceeded, or revenue returns have exceeded projections over the past 3 or 4 months. And so that gives us confidence that, if we have a budget deficit in the 2026, 2027 budget, it's going to be hopefully smaller than we anticipated. But we are still projecting budget deficits in the out years, in the future years. And so, we have to continue to be fiscally prudent. We had the largest, we filled our budget reserves. We had, I think, $36 billion in budget reserves when times were good. We've spent that down over the past couple of years to try to mitigate some of the damage from the budget deficits we've had. I believe we still have $6 or $7 billion in the budget reserves. I think even if things are better this year, I think we need to be fiscally prudent and make sure that we're not putting money into new programs that we can't then necessarily continue in future years. I think we need to focus on things like backfilling the damage that's being done, whether it's to SNAP and nutritional supplemental benefits for our constituents who are struggling the most, whether it's backfilling some of the cuts that have been made to Planned Parenthood and reproductive rights organizations in California. I think the money now needs to be to minimize and mitigate the damage that's happening today, as opposed to necessarily creating new programs that are meant to be ongoing for the future. And my guess is that that's what you're going to see, be the approach, at least from the Assembly Democratic caucus. Cuts to Medicaid I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we're facing right now, is the cuts to Medicaid that are the result of this big BS bill that the Congress passed earlier this year, that's just having devastating impacts on our constituents. Devastating. It blows my mind that the 9 Republican Congress members in California voted for this bill, knowing full well that for some of them, hundreds of thousands of their constituents are going to be very negatively impacted by the impacts of these bills. And we're going to do everything that we can in California to protect those constituents. But there's just certain fiscal realities and limits on exactly what we can do. I was really happy to see Measure A in Santa Clara County, which is to, the speaker asked me, I'm kind of all over the place, which is indicative of where my brain is right now. But the speaker asked me a couple of months ago to present the constitutional amendment, ACA 8, that then became Prop 50. And so he asked me to present it in the Elections Committee, in the Assembly Elections Committee, and then he asked me to present it on the floor of the Assembly. And when I was presenting in the Elections Committee, a Republican colleague of mine kept on trying to hammer me, how much is this going to cost? How much is the special election going to cost? And I was giving answers. The numbers were the numbers hadn't been totally buttoned down at that point. But I finally said, you know what? It's going to cost a lot less than the damage that's being done just to Santa Clara County, just to their healthcare facility over the next 5 years because of what Republicans in Congress have done. Santa Clara County is projected to lose over $1 billion just in the next 5 years to their public healthcare system, which is the second largest public hospital system in the state. And the cost of the special election was like $275 million. And so this is the Chamber of Commerce. The ROI on the investment in the special election is astronomical in comparison to the damage that's being done to California and California communities by this federal government. And that argument kind of shut my friend up. And we moved on to other questioning. So it's tough times. It's tough times, and it's really important for California to do everything that we can to just protect our constituents, especially when we're being targeted so much by the federal administration. Let me quickly kind of skip ahead. Yeah, I've got Kevin obviously was kind enough to give me great stats and figures. But the impacts to Medi-Cal access are over 55,000 residents in Santa Clara County could lose their Medi-Cal access because of HR 1, because of Trump's big bill. So skipping ahead, I think I covered a bunch of this stuff, a bunch of that stuff. Talked about the budget. I'm just skipping through my notes. Revenue trends looking better. Projections. Yep. Rainy day reserve. Yep. So in a couple of weeks, the Legislative Analyst's Office will release the next budget forecasts. And so that'll give us a kind of a little primer on maybe what to expect. And then on January 10th, or by January 10th of 2026, the governor has to submit his budget proposal. So that'll give us a sense of what what we're seeing in terms of revenue and then also the governor's kind of plans. And then we enter into 5 months of headbanging negotiations between the governor and the state Senate and the Assembly before we pass a bill in mid-June. Talked a little bit about elections. Sorry, Kevin, I mixed up your talking points. That's all right. That's good stuff. One effort that I had this year to just talk a little bit about a couple bills this year was, and Diana, stop me when it's time for Q&A.
We can do Q&A whenever you want, Mark. I have questions in my mind already rolling. I'm sure others do too, but whenever you feel comfortable, we can definitely go into Q&A.
Let's do it. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
I'm going to ask
time,
Nicole to put us into the smaller boxes so I can see everybody, if that's okay. So really short-term question and then a long-term question, Mark. Short-term, the government shutdown has impacted a lot of programs in California, like the SNAP benefits. Do you see that being more like something the state can step in, or is it going to be more county by county to help address those kind of shortfalls?
It's a great question, and one that Kevin had given me an answer to that I did not think that I forgot to mention in my talking points, just to show that staff is always smarter than the elected. I think it's going to be all of the above. I mean, I think the state can and has. And so right before we left at the end of the year, we appropriated $200 million to try to get out to a lot of our community service organizations, to try to get ahead of, whether that was cuts. I mean, we didn't even anticipate the government shutting down at that point, but we just anticipated the impacts of the HR1, and the impacts that would have on a lot of constituents getting SNAP benefits or access to Medi-Cal. Now that the government is shut down, we're seeing cities and counties appropriating millions of dollars to food banks and community service organizations. I'm sure you will see the legislature come in and probably have what we call early action in January. We're out of session right now, and we don't go back into session until the first week in January, but you'll probably see us, especially since the budget situation is better than expected, have a couple of early budget bills to try to increase revenue to our local community organizations. And then lastly, what I've been telling constituents all year, when they ask me, what can we do? I say double and triple down to your local nonprofits, because they're going to be the ones on the front lines of trying to help your friends and your neighbors and your family that are all of a sudden find themselves struggling to put food on the table or get access to healthcare or pay their electricity bills. And so we all need to dig as deep as we can, while the stock market is shooting through the roof. Those of us who are benefiting from that, take some extra money and give it to some local nonprofits that are really in need. So all of the above.
Thank you. And then my long-term question, you mentioned Medicaid. Thank you. For those who don't know, Stanford Children's, we're at 43% Medicaid from in-state folks, and then about 7% out of state. So almost 50% Medicaid at Stanford Children's. So Medicaid issues are very big for us. Our mission will never change, thankfully, but we know we can't do it alone. So it may be unfair because we don't know the numbers yet, and LAO is going to come out. But do you see the House and the Assembly and the Senate kind of trying to find innovative solutions in general and to create revenue, which I think then kind of taps the business industry. So I'm just kind of, it's not a fair question because we don't have all the data, but kind of see what maybe you're hearing amongst your colleagues.
I think there's a lot of different ideas. I think there's also a lot of if it's going to be creating, increasing revenue and increasing revenue on the business community, I think it's going to have to be very narrowly tailored, because we also don't want to do anything that's going to. Every day I'm seeing more and more layoffs. I saw layoffs at Lucille Packard, which shocked. Like I was like, oh, we're in tough times. I mean, if Lucille Packard is doing layoffs, imagine the hospitals in Fresno and Bakersfield and Eureka, and how much they must be struggling. So you got to make sure that you don't do something that's going to have kind of worse impacts on the economy, on employers. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of interest in how can we protect our most vulnerable constituents, and hopefully during just an interim tough time phase that we're in, before hopefully things change at the climate changes at the national level. So I definitely think there's going to be a lot of ideas. I'm not. I know we have some different working groups that I'm not a part of that are always talking about different ideas to try to generate more revenue and help more constituents. So I'm sure that'll be a big topic of conversation when we have our Democratic Caucus policy retreat, which we will probably do in February, to sort of plan for the year.
Thank you. I heard a stat that said that even if midterm elections happen in a favorable way and 2028 later on, it'll probably take 10 years for any change to happen on the national level to kind of undo what was passed by the B3 bill. So,
Wow.
which is scary.
That is
That's
scary.
a long time.
Seriously. And that just, it speaks to the importance of state government, county government, local government and the nonprofit sector to move a lot faster than that. 1,000%.
I don't want to monopolize the conversation. So are there any questions or comments from the group? Feel free to take yourself off of mute or raise your virtual hand or your physical hand and we'll tap you next. Gary, please.
I've got a question about housing.
Yeah.
The assessed values around here are still going up, at least for residential, not so much for commercial, but and that's good news for the school district because they get a lot of funding from the property tax, but it's bad news for people who want to own a home and buy a home or rent a place. So obviously the question is, what can we do about that? I know in Los Altos, we've actually offered to give up a couple of parking lots for housing, but I'm not sure that's even going to be enough to do the job. I think it's going to take more than that. Your thoughts?
Oh, Gary. This has been an issue that we've been trying to work on for 9 years in the legislature, that I was trying to work on the Palo Alto City Council before that. I know Sally's been fantastic on the Los Altos City Council. And I really think our housing crisis and our housing affordability crisis is the foundation for 90% of the problems that we have in California. And that includes climate change, which I know you care a lot about, because people are forced to live further and further away from where they work. And when I drive to Sacramento on Monday morning, going from west to east, I fly, right? No traffic for me. But right across the barrier, it's bumper to bumper of people driving from east to west, coming in from the East Bay or even further, to come and work in our area, in our communities. And so and that's teachers, that's Diana knows, that's nurses and even doctors, and people who work at our hospitals, that's people who work in our grocery stores. So I remember my first year in the assembly, we had a big housing package of bills. And we had a big signing ceremony with Governor Brown in San Francisco, and we patted ourselves on the back, look at all this stuff that we did, and it hardly moved the needle. And I feel like every year we pass big controversial housing bills, 75% of the time they are offered by my friend from the north, both vertically and geographically, State Senator Scott Wiener. We come back the next year and we have to do more because it's just not leading to the housing being built. And so we've put a lot of money into it, especially on the affordable housing front. Some communities have been fantastic in trying to identify areas to build more housing and being willing to build denser housing. I saw, when I was on the Palo Alto City Council, there was this sacrosanct 50-foot height limit. And it wasn't a law, but it was this rule in Palo Alto that you better not try to build higher than 50 feet. Which I thought was the dumbest thing in the world. And then I just saw yesterday that the city council is approving, Gary, to your point, building a 6-story housing project on one of their downtown parking lots. Which 6 stories, 5 stories I would have gotten recalled. 10 years ago. And so at least improvement is being made on building denser in smart areas, on El Camino Real, on University, on, our kind of most traveled corridors, near public transit. Those are the areas where it makes sense to go a little denser, especially, if we want to protect our open space, which we do. So, allowing duplexes in single family neighborhoods, making it easier for people to build ADUs, but hopefully those people actually rent those ADUs to out, as opposed to what I'm doing right now, which is using it as a home office. Although our ADU is not, you can't rent no, I can see right into my house. Yes, huge problem, need to continue to do more. So much of it is at the local level. I know we've kind of put more responsibilities on local government from the state level, but still so much of this happens or gets stopped at the local level. So it's important for our local community members who realize the devastating impact this is having on our communities to do more to support council members like Sally and her colleagues when they want to do the right thing at city council meetings. So yeah, man, huge problem. Making incremental progress, but there's a lot more progress that needs to get made. And then it's also, I was at Atherton. I try to do community coffees once every 2 years in every community in the district. And so we had one in Atherton late last year, right after Donald Trump got elected the second time. And a constituent said, we need to lower the cost of building housing is what we need to do. We need to lower the cost of building housing. And I said, yes. And he said, and we need to kick out all the illegals. And I said, oh, sir, there's a contradiction in your goals. Because if you kick out the workforce, the cost of building housing is going to go up. It's not going to go down. It was a kind of, he realized how dumb he sounded. But that's a real problem. I mean, there are only so many things that we can control. But when our immigrant, workforce and the vast majority of people who work in the home building industry are immigrants, either documented or not. If they're terrified to show up to work, if they're all self-deporting, it's only going to make it that much harder. And I think, to be honest, that's part of the president's strategy. I think it's why he and Stephen Miller are doing what they're doing is to try to harm local economies, especially in blue states and blue cities. And it really has a negative impact. Sorry, that was a ramble.
Well, it's good to hear that you're still thinking about it. It's going to take a lot of incremental improvements. HCD has taken it pretty seriously, so I think that's a good step.
Absolutely. HCD is, Governor Newsom is. A lot of our local governments are really realizing the crisis that we have, and I think are starting to do more. The tariffs. I know the tariffs are up at the Supreme Court this morning. The tariffs don't help, right? If we're putting a 40% tariff on Canadian wood, that doesn't help with lowering the cost of building housing. So a lot of challenges, but I think there's a lot of desire to improve the situation.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I saw Kim's hand go up and then Abby. So Kim?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up question to that, Mark, and I'm wondering, has there been any conversation related to the percentage of affordable units that are required in the housing? Because I think building the housing is one thing, but actually having more units that are affordable to general population is actually even more important. So just wondered if that's come up more.
Always, definitely, often a topic of conversation, both at the local level, and then at the state level. And there's been a bit of a pendulum swing. There was a big desire, maybe a decade ago, to try to increase that percentage because, to your point, we need to build affordable housing. But then we also kind of realized that. That does make it harder to
Yeah.
there's a tipping point, and once you go above that tipping point, builders won't build, and so you can have all the best intended kind of rules and requirements in the world, but if you're 15% of zero is still zero. And so it's a constant balance. Is 10% the right amount of affordable housing? Is 15? Is 20? That's why we've also had density bonus laws that say, okay, if you have a certain percentage of affordable, you can build more, to try to make the finances pencil out. So definitely, something that we talk about a lot, and it's been a bit of a moving target as we realize, the different impacts of the different requirements.
Thank you. Abby.
So, Mark, I think one of the biggest issues we have in developing housing is that we have to pass on all of the additional fees, the park fee, it just goes on and on and on. And those fees keep getting raised to the point where it's a little like gasoline. It isn't really the cost of gasoline, it's all the things that are added on to it.
Yeah.
So the consumer is really paying this huge amount. In housing, people would be shocked at how much is not really the cost of the house.
Yeah.
So with all
Yeah.
due respect, I think it's very easy to keep increasing just ever so moderately. But if it takes 2 years to take, or 2.5 years to take something from design concept to completion, in that 2.5 years, a single fee may go up $5, $10, $20,000. And I don't know, is that really the right answer to create housing that people can afford? Or does that money need to come from everybody in the community? I suspect there's a constant battle between, do we raise sales tax, for example, differently from specifically placing these costs on specific things?
Yeah. You're absolutely you're absolutely right. And these are all great things, right? We all want more parks. We all want kind of impact fees for the schools. We all want, but then it gets to a point where we have what we have, which is the cost of building housing is so expensive. And then the cost of living in the housing is expensive because the cost of building the housing is expensive. And so I think there's been much more recognition of that over the past couple of years, maybe the past like 6, 7 years. And you see that starting to change. But I would be remiss if I didn't also defer to my local city council member, who probably has some thoughts on impact fees, as I see her hands shoot up.
On camera says Councilmember means business.
Way to deflect, Mark. Way to deflect. Well, actually, that wasn't why my hand is up, but I was thinking about that as you were saying it, because the costs are what the costs are. The question is who's going to bear them. So the fees are all, as you know, Abby, the fees are all based on the time that we document through the impact surveys. I forget there's a specific name for them, about how much time that the staff spends. So who is going to bear the cost? Well, if the fees are not increased, and Los Altos actually hadn't increased fees in quite a long time, or to a commensurate level for the market, we, the city, were absorbing the cost, subsidizing that part of the building equation, Or, do we raise taxes? Nobody wants that, so who bears the cost? You're right. I mean, the costs are just astronomical, and how we divvy it up in all the players and the stakeholders who are involved in that is what makes it complicated. So I totally understand what you're saying, but we did actually, Assembly member, I can stop if you want, but I was going to mention the Measure A funds from the county, not last night's Measure A, but the previous one where we have Los Altos's first, maybe only, who knows, 100% affordable housing on 330 Distal at El Camino. And that being all affordable was really hard to finance. Took a couple years, and the county had to kick in more to close the gaps, but we waived all the fees for that. So even with no development fees and the county owning the land, the developer still took years to be able to close the financing gap to build that. It's just a really hard, I don't know what the right solutions are.
And we've,
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt this great conversation. And Mark, I will definitely like to respond to what Councilmember just said. But Sally, you're going to have the last question because unfortunately we're winding down our time. So, but please, I'm starting to interrupt you, Mark. Go ahead.
well, I mean, just, talking about how complicated it is. And there are certain things that we can do at the state level. I had a bill a couple of years ago. There are 3 different state entities that give affordable housing tax credits, and they all have different reporting mechanisms, and different, paperwork that the developer, the affordable housing developer, has to fill out. And I was like, that's dumb. That's a waste. Pick one entity at the state level, you be the point person, and then you distribute that information to the others. So it's those kinds of things to try to look diving into the process, figuring out where there's redundancy and inefficiency, and trying to improve that just to make it a little bit better, because it is so complicated. And the reality at the end of the day is our system has led to not enough housing being built. So we need to continue to improve and change our process. Sally, you had a question.
Lightning fast question for Sally.
All right, Diana, there's time for it. It's not a long question, but the housing discussion reminded me of one of the many things on the news last evening as election results were coming in. And I'm sure many of you heard that the mayor and vice mayor of Fairfax there was a recall vote on them because they were supporting a housing development that a large group of the citizenry didn't. And the mayor said, well, we're just following the law. So if they want to recall me, let them have at it. But the recall vote failed. So 55% voted against the recall, 45% voted for. But that's an interesting question. The vice mayor commented how we're seeing a trend where recalls are done not for malfeasance, which is what they used to be for, bribery, corruption, whatever, but they're now being done when people don't like a vote you take, a position you take. So have you seen more of that? And what do you think, what do you think that bodes for our democracy what if those voters had recalled them? Or what if voters put an initiative forward and said, ye shall not build anything higher than 3 stories, or whatever, whatever.
Those types of initiatives get put on the ballot all the time. I live in Menlo Park now, and Menlo Park's got a history of that kind of thing. Sally, it's a great question, and we talked a lot about it after the failed recall of Governor Newsom back in 2021. I had a bill to increase the signature threshold that the signatures you have to collect to initiate the recall process, because it was like you have to get like 5 signatures. Like you go to the bar and you see some friends, and all of a sudden you can start the process of recalling a local elected official. We didn't succeed at some of the bigger recall reform, but I do agree that it's really troubling that people are using recalls because you disagree with the decision that somebody made, as opposed to that doing something that shows that they're unfit for office. And it really is a discouraging sign of the times and of our polarized society, I think. that you're seeing people kind of, and it's such a waste of resources. It's such a waste of everyone's attention. Sometimes that's what the recall proponents want. They don't even care if they succeed. They just want to kind of gum up the works for 6 months, 9 months. That in it of itself is a victory for them. But I agree with you. I'll go back and revisit some of the ideas that we looked at 4 years ago to figure out if there's some other ways that, at least in California, that we can just make sure that recalls are used for what they're supposed to be used for. Like you said, breaking the law, misuse of public funds, those kinds of things.
Yeah. The other example was the Great Highway, the supervisor in
Yeah,
San
totally.
Francisco, so
Totally.
it's just an interesting trend.
Yeah, discouraging, at least for those of us in office, Sally.
Mark, I know you have your advocacy for the voice with people voice and the voice